really need the local support. So, um, let's just see here, a few notes. I want to uh, uh, kind of go back to the many years that we've been involved and just say that Science Saturdays are really designed to help everybody understand that everything on our planet's connected. And over the years, I've mentioned this, that if you're concerned about the bay or the ocean, we really need to be concerned about the bigger picture, which is, the planet. So as we need to reach an ever widening circle of concerned citizens, and we want to enjoy the gift that is our planet Earth. And as I've said many times, I don't know why we call it Earth, because it's really only 25% Earth and 75% water, but well, we'll move on from that concept. Anyhow, the foundation is a great place for art and science to meet, and that was the beginning, and that was Boris Bly's vision. And stewardship is where art and science can meet through recreation. So my question is, why not make doing good things for our planet part of your recreation? And that's going to be a theme that you're going to hear about this year. Now, I've been producing the Science Saturdays for over 18 years. I mentioned that before, but I started when I was president of Reclaim the Bay and kind of moved through those various chairmanships. And I love that job. So I just want to let everybody know that. And finally, before we start today's session, I'd like to acknowledge the team at the Foundation's Environmental Stewardship Committee. Now, Ben Worst, and many of you have heard Ben talk, and he's just great. And he's been involved now for over 10 years, and many people know him as the field manager for the Conserve Wildlife of New Jersey. He's been great, and he's actually the father of that nature trail that runs from the Science Building out to the Marsh Walk, which that Marsh Walk is something I managed to get done about 15 years ago, and that needs some help. So you'll be hearing more about all that. Now, I'd also like to introduce kind of our newest member, Darlene Cavalier, who made her debut last year. Some of you may remember her talk. Darlene is just great to have. She lives in Barnegat Light. But in addition to being a hands-on scientist, she's a professor of practice at Arizona State University and the founder of SciStar, which is a popular science portal and research platform connecting millions of people to the real science that they can do right here on LBI. And you're going to be hearing more about that because Darlene and SciStar are going to be integrated more closely into our activities. So just a couple things about housekeeping. We would like for you to sign in to the chat. If you have any questions or any comments, we're going to be using the chat. We're going to also make this an interactive session. We want to hear some ideas from you all. You'll see how the session unfolds. And when we do have an open mic, all we ask, I think we have around 40 people on the call today, is that keep your questions or comments brief. And if I'm responding and I go long, Darlene, don't hesitate to interrupt me. Tell me you're going a little long. I'll do the same for you, and we may have to do the same for some of the people on the call. Okay, so let's move on. Yeah. Well, here's a little overview of today's session. So first thing, I'm going to do a little introduction of what we're doing this year. Then Darlene's going to talk about citizen science and how you can make your observations count. And they're going to really be important. This is I think, a wonderful program this year. Then we're going to relate some of the topics to the projects. And then we're going to hear your thoughts about projects, things that you'd like to see included in our sessions. So just an overview. For over 15 years, we've tried to stimulate people with presenting facts and information about environmental topics. And we really want people to get involved. So we want to instill that desire of involvement. So this year, we're not going to just be promoting the knowledge, but we're going to actually be giving you some ideas of programs that you can participate in. Now, say, oh, well, how much science can amateur scientists like us really provide? Well, our observations, when arranged in a scientific manner, can be extremely valuable. So even the observations of the layman can be used by scientists to validate and ground truth a variety of those observations. I'm just going to show you a quick example. Now, this is just an observation from people at the beach. And we can see that this provides evidence of global warming, because in 1900, we can see that it was still pretty chilly. And by 2020, we see that people don't need quite as many clothes on. So, all right. So I'm going to turn things over to Darlene, and she's going to talk a little bit about what is citizen science and how can you and I get more involved. Darlene?
Yes, thank you, Rick. Thanks for the introduction. And hopefully all of you see what I see, although without the little scribble mark that I'm seeing on the screen. I don't know what the heck that is. But so what is citizen science? And while I'm talking, since I'm seeing people introduce themselves, I see some scientists in the group. Hello, welcome. Nature lovers, others, if you're tuning in, you're probably curious or concerned, certainly care about nature and protecting the island. If you're already involved in a citizen science project, can you tell us in chat? And maybe even just describe the type of project that you're involved in. And Rick, if we can go to the next slide. Citizen science is basically a way for you to turn your curiosity and concerns into action. So it's more described as a collaboration with scientists, but sometimes a member of the island, a resident of the island can start and a research question. Hey, I'm really curious about XYZ. Will somebody get involved and help me develop protocols and collect data so we can sort of make sense of this? Typically, these projects are led by a professional scientist, and they just can't be everywhere to collect data. Sometimes they have too much data. So either there's a gap in data and they develop protocols that we all follow to be able to share credible evidence. And it's pretty simple. You can usually do this anytime, anywhere. And sometimes there's too much data. So the data is put online. Protocols are followed to understand how to analyze that data. Believe it or not, you can be part of analyzing data, help discover new galaxies. You can help accelerate research on medical issues, including Alzheimer's. Citizen science is science. It's just a way for all of us to get involved and help shape the future that we want through science. Next slide, please. These are examples of some projects. So there are thousands of projects out there, and they have pretty impressive outcomes already made possible because of people just like us. People that, unlike some who are here, people who may not have actually even gone to college. So citizen science is really for everybody. We know because of citizen science that bird populations have declined by 50%. That is because of people just like us sharing information. And I bet some of you are involved in projects that helped to inform that research. Maybe you use eBird, maybe you use iNaturalist, very popular apps that are used for bird watching. And in the process, you're sharing your data with scientists who help make it open and advance scientific research. The one about the bacteria, more than 50 types of bacteria that live in your belly button, is because people were involved in swabbing their belly buttons, sending samples into North Carolina State University scientists who analyzed that data, and that was one of the outcomes. There's more and more benefits that are being published. It absolutely accelerates research when a research project is designed nicely. So we have this example from one weekend in 2019. We're going to see that again this April because the same project is activating and mobilizing people. But in one weekend in 2019, volunteers did the equivalent of 2,566 research hours, or 3.5 months of the amount of time it would have taken Cornell researchers to do the same project. And that was playing an online game, learning how to analyze images to look and see whether or not blood was flowing or blood was stalled. Very simple. 10 people have to see and say the same thing about the same exact little clip. And this is how we kind of make sure that the data is credible data. And in fact, in many cases, I would say the bar is even higher for citizen scientists than it is for graduate students and professional researchers. They don't usually have 10 people having to see and say the same thing about their data and their observations. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so projects you can do that benefit Long Beach Island. This doesn't mean that the scientist is here on Long Beach Island. Maybe they are. But sometimes, like I mentioned, a scientist may be studying something and need people who are situated in locations to provide that data. Long Beach Island, there's so many projects that can be done from Long Beach Island. This is SciStarter, Rick mentioned. You'll see the URL at the bottom. This is a project finder. This is how you can just type in your location or enable your browser to let our site know where you're located. And you'll see a bunch of different projects that are in need of your help. I've also singled some out on the right. These are projects that actually align directly with some of the speakers that will be part of Science Saturday that Rick's going to go through shortly. So they'll give a talk, and then you'll see a project that is directly related to that talk that you can get involved in. Osprey Watch, you're probably really familiar with that. I know we have an osprey nest right around the corner from where I am in Barnegat Light. Globe at Night. This is a really increasingly important one as the island becomes so populated. I think people are just unaware that leaving their lights on at night is a real problem, not just because it prevents us from viewing the night sky, which it does, that ambient light is light pollution, but it disrupts nesting habits, migratory paths. It disrupts our own human health if we're not able to sleep well. So that's a project that's easy to do, and it has follow-on. Yeah, Ben, it has follow-on steps and recommendations. Like maybe you can just let your neighbors know, hey, if you could just turn off your lights at night, especially in the spring and the fall when we have nighttime migration coming through with billions of birds. You know, they get disoriented from the ambient light. They become weak and disoriented, and millions die in these processes. So iNaturalist, I mentioned earlier, really simple free app you can download on your phone. You take pictures of biodiversity, so living things around you. So many people are already involved in that here on the island. And I know that because I look at iNaturalist and I look at all the different observations that are made on a regular basis. It's the largest source of biodiversity data for scientists in the world. And it's all coming from people just like us. You see something interesting or odd, upload it to iNaturalist, and you'll have professionals can be volunteers too, who just know what the heck they're talking about. And they will help you identify exactly what you're looking at there. So that's cool. Happy whale, obviously a big topic here on the island and along the East Coast here. This is to really help collect credible evidence, not anecdotes, but actually evidence of what you're seeing. And icy change is another one that is, My Coast, I skipped by My Coast, certainly a very important one. I'm very involved in that project. Another one, free app, you document changing coastlines. There's other things you can do with that app, but it's actually used by the policymakers here, especially in New Jersey. They're the ones who support the development of My Coast. Icy Change is another free app that's tied to My Coast. This is where you don't have to know what you're looking at, but you know, especially if you live on the island all year long, you can start to see changes. I see them posted on Facebook in different social groups. Hey, has anybody noticed that, the flooding in Surf City is worse this year than it's been in the past? So documenting and sharing those observations through sites like Icy Change. Some of this is actually mapped to current events that happen in the news, as well as sensors that are all over the place. So Icy Change actually works with NASA EPA, NOAA, and other agencies to take your observations that may be anecdotal and be able to make sense of them and say, are we seeing this in the data as well? What is happening here? Next slide, please.
Oop, oop. I don't know why I'm having trouble with this.
Okay. I can do it too if you want, Rick, whatever's good.
Yeah, I think I got it now.
All right. So these are just benefits of citizen science to science and society. Obviously, it broadens the scope of who's allowed to be part of science. And we're all part of science. You know, you fund more than half of the basic research that happens in the United States through your tax dollars. You're electing people to represent you and make policy discussions based on things that are probably more personal to you or value driven. These are ways that more people can be involved in seeing things with your own eyes and addressing research questions that actually can't be answered without your help. People who are involved in citizen science, there's a lot of evidence now that shows not just topic related science literacy that increases, but how you see yourself as being part of science and being part of society. Confidence is increased. You're more likely to get involved in policy related conversations when you're involved in citizen science projects, but you don't have to. You might only have 5 minutes to get involved in one of these projects, and that's fine. But the more you can submit data for longitudinal studies, of course, the better that is. And at the end of the day, it does help accelerate important research and discovery. Next slide. This is SciStarter. SciStarter is a free site, and it's free because it's made possible by support from most of the federal agencies, private foundations, and then we do service-oriented work for the Girl Scouts and Verizon and school districts and others who need extra support to help their communities learn what citizen science is, find relevant projects, and measure collective outcomes. So we don't create these projects at SciStarter. We organize them from all over the world, and then we measure collective impact by seeing how many people are involved in what types of projects, how frequently they contribute, what are they learning, where do they drop off, where are the barriers. In one example is that we could see that people would look at projects but not join so many. So we looked at the characteristics of those projects, what was going on that they weren't actually getting involved in these projects. And it turns out, although most projects don't require more than a phone, and even that, if you don't have internet or you don't have cell phone access, you can actually print out data sheets to help people get involved in these. At the end of it, though, you do need to share the data back. That's what makes it citizen science and not a STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math learning program. You need to share the data or it's not citizen science. But what we noticed is that people who didn't have access to tools or instruments that weren't readily available around their house didn't get involved in the projects. And who would blame them? Who could blame them? So this is why now we work with almost 1,000 libraries across the country to work with them to be able to loan out tools and instruments so more people can get involved in more of the sophisticated types of projects like air quality monitoring, water quality monitoring, soil quality, you name it. There are many, many tools that you can now borrow from your library. I'm still working on the Surf City Library. Hopefully we get there soon, but Ocean County is one of the members of this library network too. So on SciStarter, you can find free trainings. Look at the top navigation bar, and that's the first step I would recommend is get involved in the Foundations of Citizen Science training. Just complete it. It's self-guided, it's online. There's an interactive quiz that was developed by the award-winning instructional designers at Arizona State University, which is my other hat. I live here, but I work there. And it's just a great primer to share with people too. And then go ahead and find projects. So next slide.
Nope.
Yeah, that's okay. We already repeated that, so that's okay. This one's good, Rick. This is just kind of a heads up of what's happening in April. And I see that we have 2 events as part of Science Saturday during April. This is also Citizen Science Month. This is when a lot of people get involved in citizen science. And in this year, we're looking for a collective impact of 1 million acts of science. So it's just a great opportunity and a great excuse to get involved and be part of 1 million acts of science. you'll see a lot more information coming on SciStarter about how you can be part of that and get recognized for being part of that too. Next slide. Over to Rick. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in chat. I can answer them while Rick is talking about the topics too.
Okay, great. And we have set things up so that we are going to have plenty of time for conversation, and we really invite the conversation. Like everything else, there's an awful lot of information out there, and we're trying to condense it down. And I don't want to convince anybody about the SciStarter website and the LBIF Foundation. The SciStarter website is a place to go to find projects. We're going to be linking projects to our presentations that I'm just about to present to you. So that's where that fits in. So some of our Science Saturday topics. I have lined here the speaker and the date, just so we're going to run over them. And I'm not going to belabor the point, but I am just going to run down this because you can start to see the relationship of a topic to the relationship of a project that you would find on SciStarter. Next week, we're going to lead things off with Doug Zemeckis, and a number of you have heard him speak, and he's going to be talking about the relationship of stewardship to our valuable marine resources. And you may remember last year, he showed a map showing all of the things that are going on in the ocean. I think a lot of people are, of course, concerned about or were concerned about what was going to be happening with the windmills, and probably still are concerned about the use or exploitation of the wonderful resource that we call the ocean. Well, Doug's going to let us see some more of the things, and it's a very, very, very busy ocean that we're involved in. The one after that, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think, and is related. Josh Kohut has also been a speaker before, and he is the one who in Rutgers deployed the gliders. They look like a torpedo, and they have the ability to glide across the ocean, gathering data all the way from here to the Azores, and they're completely autonomous, and they go through the water, sampling, testing, gathering data, and when they surface, then they transmit the data. Well, he's got all kinds of information, but he's going to be focusing, and this sounds to me to be a fun topic, on the challenges that sea creatures are faced with this ever-changing ocean. And he drew a great analogy. He said, imagine if you went to the grocery store, and every time you went there, things were changed. Like you went to the deli section, but next week the deli section is completely changed and you're not sure where it is. And he said, imagine going up and down the aisles looking for something that used to be there, but it isn't there anymore. And all of a sudden you hear this terrible noise, this beeping sound, and it's the guy who is driving the forklift truck who's going to be restocking the shelves. So imagine what it would be like for us in the grocery store. That's what he's going to explain for the sea creatures. We have the screening of a really great documentary called Deep Rising. Wow, what's that all about? Well, it's actually about the use or exploitation of the resources of the ocean. It's not a documentary that's saying, here is what's right and here is what's wrong. It's just saying, here is what is. And it certainly causes a great deal of wonder. And along with that, we will have a panel. So that'll be a live presentation at the foundation, and we'll have a panel that will be discussing some of the things that are revealed in that show. Next one is the night sky. James Webster is an amateur astronomer, and he's got a great deal of information. He lives not far from us. He lives up in Toms River, and I've had several different talks with him. The light pollution is really a big one. Not only does it cause problems for those of us who like to look at the night stars, but as Darlene was mentioning, it wreaks complete havoc with migratory birds. So he's gonna tell you a lot about that. And he also has a whole series of talks on astronomy that we might all enjoy as we move forward into the summer and nighttime observations and those things. Stan Hales will be speaking on the 17th. He is the executive director of the Barnegat Bay Partnership, and he'll be talking about the many programs that they are involved in providing citizen engagement. One of the ones, a number of you probably participated in this or at least know of it, called Paddling for the Edge. And this is where kayakers go along the edge of sedges and the edge of the marshes and collect data that helps us understand what's happening with not only the animals that live in there, but of course the erosion. My Coast, Amanda is with the Jacques Cousteau Estuary Reserve, J.C. Nair, they call that. Some of you would remember other talks from J.C. Nair. She's going to be talking about this thing, My Coast, which is how we can document the changes that we are seeing in the coast so that, as Darlene again mentioned, policymakers need this data to consider what needs to be done with our state and our estuaries as a result of the sea level rise, global warming, and all those problems. Then, backed by popular demand, Ben Worst talking about the Osprey and the Osprey project and program. Angela Anderson, many of you have heard Angela before. And you may be aware that the township has opened a new field station down in Holgate. It's a lovely facility, and it's really worthwhile. And they have a lot of programs going on there during the summer. She's going to identify some of those, and she's also going to be talking about a project that just got grant funded to study and understand the erosion of our very necessary marsh islands, or our sedge islands that are in Barnegat, Manahawkin, and Little Egg Harbor Bays. Then we've got two talks on energy. You may remember last year we had Ray Bukowski from New Jersey Energy, and his perspective is, I think, enlightening because it helps us understand that there's no one solution. We aren't going to solve our energy problems with just wind or just solar. We need all of the above, and there's some very interesting developments using hydrogen, and he's going to be talking about that. Dave Hinchy is going to also be talking about energy, but he's going to be talking about sort of the little known or little understood requirement to distribute energy. We all see the electric wires that are running to the houses, but how is that being transmitted, and how is that being how are we becoming more efficient in the transmission of that? And he too is going to be talking about one of the distribution elements, which can be hydrogen for vehicles or for hydrogen generators. So two of those energy talks. Michael Fulmer, he is with the National Weather Bureau, graduated from Mates, is very familiar with our local weather, and he's going to be giving us a talk about some of the changes that we're observing and what's driving them. DEP, we've got a great talk this year, which is going to be about some of the things that they're doing to promote citizen science, to involve us in dealing with some environmental issues that we as individuals can deal with. For example, the problem with balloons. And she is going to be underscoring a project that they have. Then New Jersey DEP is working with the contiguous states, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New York, and even up into Connecticut, to deal with this problem that's causing such havoc among our bird populations and other marine creatures with balloons. And then last but not least, to understand some of the great things that you can see over in the Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge, Virginia Reddick will be here. She is the manager of that huge swath of land, and we'll be talking about the many things that you can observe and learn over there, and some of the citizen science projects involved there. So that's kind of a brief overview of what you can expect this year. So what we want to do now is kind of open the mic. You see what those topics are. I didn't and I couldn't really go into a lot of detail, but maybe just the topics raise some questions in your minds. And my idea would be, I can't make any promises, but if you've got some ideas about what does that mean, or I want to make sure they cover this, or I'm not sure that I understand something, I'd like to know what some of those things are that I can then talk to the speaker about prior to their presentation, and maybe we can include some other things. We'd also like to hear if you are working on a citizen science project or a project that you might like to talk about. So we'll just see, is the mic open now? And Darlene, maybe you can see if there are any questions in the
Yeah, I see.
yeah.
I see that there's a comment about, by the way, I can hear your audio just fine. Just that's a comment to Sherry. So just so I can hear him. But thank you for sharing that. For people who can't make the session, all the sessions, as I understand it, they will be recorded. And actually, that's a good question too, Rick. Do we know which are in person and will all also be available by Zoom? And I believe they're all going to be recorded.
Right. So, and it looks like maybe we need to, it looks like all of this people are muted. And so that may be a universal mute. And if Jenna could open up the mic, that would help us. To answer your question, yes, all of the sessions will be recorded as we did last year, and then they will be posted. And so you'll be able to, if you missed a presentation, you'll be able to pick it up by going out to lbifoundation.org/science. I'll mention that again later on. But if you go out to the foundation website, that's really it, foundation website science, and that's where they'll all be posted. And was there a second part to your question, Darlene?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think you answered it. I was just about to answer this one about the stargazing apps. If any of our amateur astronomers want to weigh in on that, your favorite stargazing apps. And I'll just add that this project called Globe at Night. So you can go to SciStarter, you can look for Globe at Night, or you can just Google Globe at Night. And they work with a number of different apps too. You don't need to have an app for that, but it's very useful to have an app because they help you find a relevant constellation, and you basically identify the stars that you're able to see. And by not being able to see others, that's actually an indication of the amount of light pollution that you have there. But others can weigh in there too. And Rick, maybe you're familiar more with what MATES is. This is a
Sure.
question from Eva.
So this is someone who goes to MATES, which some people don't know, but MATES is the Marine Academy for Technology and Environmental Sciences. It is the county's facility. It's a high school over in Manahawkin, phenomenal marine biology high school. And the classes, by the way, are limited. I think it's about 60 students per year. So there'd be freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, 4 years or 3. I don't know. It's one of those. And we, over the years, have had a number of speakers from MATES on a variety of topics. Some of you may know Dr. John Wennick. He's been there, a number of others. So we certainly want to involve MATES. And I think some of these citizen science projects, as we move forward, could be projects that students at MATES are in fact working on. Reclaim the Bay does fund a couple of internships for students of MATES. And that, of course, would have to do with the bay and the clams, but there may be other studies. I know that they were doing studies on beach erosion, ocean beach erosion, and a variety of other species. So yeah, MATES is a very important part of the mix.
I wanted to add too that I know there's an avid gardening community here on Long Beach Island. And occasionally I'll see people walking and doing beach cleanups, organized or independently. Citizen science, there are so many projects that can be tied into that. So you don't have to do anything more than you're already doing. The only difference is that what you're observing would be shared with people who actually need that. So Jennifer, just thank you, Jennifer. So I belong to the gardening club here, a pollinator garden on Long Beach Island in Barnegat Light. And so it's a pollinator garden. And my gosh, so much data is needed by people who are looking to see what the population changes are for monarch butterflies here. And so it's very easy to get involved in, you can type in gardening. There's actually a pollinator page, and I'll follow up when we send these a recording to this discussion out to everybody who registered. I'll include some links there, but there are projects that if you just searched for monarch or pollinators, you'll see them come up. And they're really designed that, especially for intergenerational programs too, you sometimes just need to look at any flowering plant for between 3 and 5 minutes and count and identify the types of pollinators that visit that plant. Very easy. The materials are available in many different languages as well. For youth, there are coloring sheets. We say for youth, but actually I learned a lot about what pollinators are just by printing out downloadable coloring sheets. So you color the sheets and you can see what types of pollinators there are, and it helps build confidence. So when you're looking at a flower, you have a pretty good idea of the type of pollinator that you're witnessing there. And then you just enter through online forms what you saw during those 3 to 5 minutes. And the nice thing is you typically, for many of these projects, can see all of the data that was reported around you too. So it's a good way to start to look at trends. Many projects will also share outcomes, even if it's not a final peer-reviewed paper, because that takes time. They'll often share, blog updates, or if you join their project, they'll email you with some updates too. There's projects from NASA when you're outside that ask you to just observe the cloud formation. So I'm looking outside, such a beautiful day today. Beautiful clouds are blowing by me right now. A NASA project that instructs you on how to use a free app to identify the types of clouds that you're seeing. And that simple act is helping to actually ground truth NASA satellite data, because satellites are on the other side of the clouds, obviously. And those satellites use infrared technology to start to look for where sources of water exist around the Earth. And one thing it doesn't do well is see through the clouds. So it tries to identify what types of clouds it could see from above, but it needs human eyes to help identify and ground truth satellite data. For those who do beach cleanups, that My Coast app, the Icy Change app, something called Marine Debris Tracker. These are all designed so that while you're cleaning up, you're often the first person to see something that may indicate trends. I know when my in-laws love to walk on the beach. Hello, Bonnie. Hello, Ron. They do a lot of sea glassing, but you can start to see trends there. Like, why are there so many horseshoe crabs that wash up at the same time? When you document those as you're cleaning up and picking up some trash, or you're actually helping people to understand what those trends might mean. Maybe they're connected, maybe they're not. But most of those projects are looking at the impact of microplastics as they make their way into our drinking water. Sometimes you're the first eyes to see some of this too. So yes, invasive species. This is another great one too for that iNaturalist app. And by the way, if you do download the iNaturalist app, it's free. There's a kid version called Seek, for which you need no account. If you do, I would encourage you to also have a SciStarter account. Obviously, it's free. And you can see where in your SciStarter settings you would add your iNaturalist username. And the reason is because that then helps you track your engagement across a lot of different projects. And that actually matters. You'll see how that matters over time. If you're a college student and you need community service hours, your dashboard is going to show, look at all of these things that I've done. But it's also a way for you to gauge, like, okay, I haven't really gotten involved in this project in a long time. Let me go back and do that one. But for iNaturalist, you will start to see not just what you might be witnessing as invasive species, but what your neighbors are. It's such a popular app that you're going to see other things that other people see along the island too.
That's good. Well, and I was going to just sort of jump in there. What I'm making some notes on future talks, and I just came up with three of them. We have had talks on pollinators and had related talk on the monarch butterflies. So I think that those are two topics we want to talk about. And of course, we do have beehives at the foundation, and so we'll no doubt have a talk on bees. Last fall, I believe, we did have the pollinator potluck, which is we hold that in the fall when we are going to take the honey out of the beehives. And what it had been in the past, anyhow, was people brought some covered dish, and we all kind of noshed and tasted the fresh honey right out of the hive as we took that harvested that honey. So pollinators and invasive species, and then I think at some point, maybe later on, March or something like that, to have a little session about SciStarter, just so we could walk them through the screens, Darlene, that you were referring to about where you can find a project and where you can do all those things.
And
Husband wants to know where he can see
otters.
otters. Yeah. Well, I've seen otters along Bonnet Island. That's the causeway leading onto LBI. Matter of fact, otters happen to love oysters and clams, and they sometimes get into our oysters and clam beds. But where I've seen them have been marshy areas where they were obviously harvesting some level of shellfish. And by the way, just these kinds of topics are things, email me, and it's just pretty simple, rickb@reclaimthebay.org. Reclaim the Bay, just all one long word, rickb@reclaimthebay.org. And I don't know that I'll have the answer, but I can spin it off maybe to somebody who does have an answer. And while I'm talking about sites, remember that the foundation is lbifoundation.org, and the science just /science. I'll splash that up in another minute.
And also, I'm also taking notes for these. They will appear on that microsite that Rick mentioned earlier. That's where you'll find recordings and then also projects that are related there, as well as others that people are expressing an interest in that you can do from Long Beach Island.
Great. I see a question about astronomy, about stargazing. James Webster, our speaker, he'll be, it's not too long before he speaks. It'll be February the 10th. And I can direct a question to him. I use a thing called Starry Night myself, and I'm not the level of amateur that he is by a long stretch, but I do use that free app, which is pretty good to help me understand what I'm looking at.
And I see clearoutside.com I had never heard of. So thanks for sharing that research.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is to build this community as we've been doing over the years. And I can see our community is forming up, which is kind of what I was hoping would happen just by the nature of these questions. I don't know exactly what happened, why we couldn't open the mic and hear your voices, but anyhow, we can figure that out for the next time. And what I put up here are the contact things. Again, me, it's just rickb@reclaimthebay.org, and then lbifoundation.org/science. But send me the emails. I'll share them with Darlene. And I think, Darlene, if you have any closing comments, we're inside our hour. We try and observe everybody's desire to use their time wisely on a Saturday morning, and it is a nice day out there, so I want to get out myself. Any closing comments, Darlene?
No, just thanks for joining us. Hopefully we get to, move through this movement together this year. Thanks, Rick.
Great. Okay, well, we'll see you all next week. Doug Zemeckis, great speaker, good slides, lots of information. And if you have some questions, maybe note them down during the week, and then we can always put them in the chat. So that's a good way to do it. All right, well, thank you all, and thank you again to the foundation and to Daniela and the staff, Kate.
Thank
and
you.
Jenna. See you all later. See you next week.
Thanks, Rick.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rick. Thank Darlene.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Ted.
Hey, Rick. Thank you.
See ya.
Yeah.
All right.